It rests on 13 acres of earth, over the very center of hell. Here is the first motion picture to offer to the daring a look into the final, maddening space between life and death. The last house on the left. To avoid fainting, keep repeating.
It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie.
Sights and sounds far beyond anything you've tested. The last house on the left. To avoid fainting, keep repeating.
It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie.
Take as much as you can.
Only a movie.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. I am the Ink Northerner, and today I'm doing what I've been threatening to do since I first set up my channel. I'm actually going to talk about a film in some semi-depth. Obviously I've done a couple of lists, but I've never actually reviewed a single film on my channel. So as you can tell from the trailer, I'm reviewing today the 1972 Wes Craven directorial debut, The Last House on the Left. It's a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, it's 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, however you want to say it, and 68% on Metacritic. As I say, it was written and directed by the amazing Wes Craven, who, if you don't already know, he also directed some of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. He was the original director. I think he was the original writer for the first one. He was also the original director for Scream. Wes Craven is probably credited with bringing the horror genre back into the mainstream as it dipped towards sort of the like 90s, early 2000s. With Scream, Wes Craven really did bring it back. It's also produced by Sean S. Cunningham, who is known for the Friday the 13th series and House 1 and 2. I've got some notes on the screen, but I'm trying to sort of remember as much as I can without actually having to constantly look at the notes. So arguably the biggest star in the film at this time would have been David Hess, and I only say he went on to he was the biggest star because he's the only one out of the main cast who actually went on to star in additional films. David Hess is also the composer for all the music in the film, and he does a lot of music for other films as well. And the real biggest star though in this is probably Martin Kove, who plays a relatively small part in it. He's still got quite a few speaking lines, but it's still relatively small compared to the rest. Martin Kove went on to play Kreese in the Karate Kid films and also in Cobra Kai, which is on Netflix at the minute. He was also in Rambo and a couple of other action films. So the main premise of the film is a sort of 70s exploitation film. It starts off like a lot of exploitation films at the start with a note saying that this is a true story, all the events were real, we just changed the name of people. It's definitely not a true story. But that happened a lot with sort of 70s, 80s shock horror, exploitation horror films. The film itself was actually inspired by an Ingmar Bergman film from 1960 called The Virgin Spring. A film I've not actually watched, but yeah, Ingmar Bergman directed that, and I think it was Swedish. I think Ingmar Bergman's Swedish. It starts off as a sort of coming of age type film where you get introduced to one of the main teenage characters in this, Mari. She's just had her 17th birthday and she sort of is rebelling against her parents. Her dad's a doctor. I don't think it says what her mum does, but yeah, it starts off with her rebelling in her way she dresses and her attitude and the words she uses. The film though then takes quite a big like left swing. They go to a rock concert. They're going to see a band called Blood something. I can't remember the name of the band. They were called Bloodbath, I think. You never see the band in the film at all. It's just it's the vehicle for getting them to the city. When they're in the city, which is New York, they try to score some weed. Unfortunately, that leads them being introduced to a gang of sort of psychotic convicts who begin to brutally torture them. Now, on their way into the city, on the radio, you hear the news of this gang's escape, leading to them becoming one of the major parts in it. When they try to score some weed, they're tortured. It then cuts to the parents trying to find them via the police, the sheriff, sorry, and then you see the gang putting the girls into the boot of the car and setting off out of the city. I think they're heading towards Canada. So then there is another twist to the film. The car breaks down outside of Mary's house. As they pull the girls out, the girls try to escape. This leads to them being brutally sort of raped and tortured and made to do things that you know they shouldn't. I can understand why for the 70s it was a film that wasn't very sort of well liked, but I'll get onto some more of that in a minute. After this has happened, one of the girls escapes. Mary's friend escapes. She tries to run away. She eventually gets caught and she's murdered by the two people who catch her. It then goes back to cuts back to Mary again. The main leader of the gang, who is David Hesse's character, begins to sort of brutally torture her again. She then gets dressed and walks into a lake, at which point she's killed by them. The gang then use the premise that they've broken down, or that they have broken down, to gain access to her family's, to Mary's mum and dad's house. In the mum discovers, I think it's a locket that Mary's given one of the gang, and this sends the film in a complete, utter different turn again. It becomes a massive revenge killing film. So yeah, it becomes a revenge film for the parents. There's this particular scene in it, if you've not watched the film, there's a particular scene in it which involves the mother by the lakeside, and she bites something off and spits it into the lake. You don't actually see her bite it off or see anything from that, you just hear the plop in the lake. The film really though mashes all different sorts of genres. So you know, the sheriffs are the comedy characters. They are just bumbling idiots. It's very sort of Cannonball Run-esque with Sheriff T. Buford T. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But yeah, they really are the comedy element. Every time they're on, there's a sort of comedic music playing. It mixes, like I say, massive amounts of genres in terms of, you know, it starts with the traditional psychological sort of horror with then tinges of violence, and then it adds the revenge in. Basically, it goes from quite a simple film to batshit crazy violence in next to no time. Now, the violence by today's standards is not that bad, but it would be seen as being quite bad in the 70s, I would have thought. The other thing that's strange about it is the soundtrack. So the music sometimes doesn't fit with the way that the film is sort of coming out. but I think that was a conscious choice on a creative conscious choice on Wes Craven's part. It works, but you know, it's just strange to somebody who potentially hasn't seen this film or know anything about it. The Last House on the Left was one of the video nasties from which made up part of the 1984 Videos Recording Act. The 1984 Videos Recording Act was centred around a moral panic of film corrupting children, and the campaign originated from the battle axe known as Mary Whitehouse, who I fucking hate because I hate her idea of you know, censorship. I agree that some things need to be censored, but it should be down to the individual parents and the individual person to censor, not some stupid battle axe woman who thinks she has the right to tell people what to do. Anyway, enough of my hatred for Mary Whitehouse. I guess for me, without Last House on the Left, you wouldn't have classic films such as Nightmare on Elm Street. You wouldn't have your Friday the 13th, because had this not got on to gain some semblance of success, I don't think we would have seen Craven and Cunningham hit the heights that they hit. You know, that could be just my left field take on it. The film itself, you know, it gained quite a cult following, especially after it was added to the 1984 Video Nasties list. It was never fully released in the UK until 2008, I think. It was released fully uncut for home viewing. But yeah, this film played a major part in my sort of life. My dissertation was made up of 7,500 word study on this film, and also a 7,500 word sort of tie-in with the 1984 Videos Recording Act and the list of video nasties, all of which are by today's standards quite tame, some of which are completely lost to man because the negatives for them were just destroyed. There is a good companion book for the film if people are interested. It's called The Last House on the Left, The Making of a Cult Classic by David A. Sulskin. I'll put the link to the Amazon page for it, or if I can find it, a link to it somewhere in the description. But yeah, so for me, do I think that people should see this film? Yes, I really do. I think people should see it if they've not seen it. It's not as horrendous as it may have sounded the way I was describing it. Does it stand the test of time? Possibly not, but if you go into it viewing it as a film of the period it was from, it is a good film, a good horror film. It stands up. So yeah, that really is sort of my first. I don't want to give massive amounts of plot away, or I've given more, parts of it away, but I don't want to give massive amounts of a play-by-play from start to finish of the film. The one thing that was amazing with it, as you saw at the start with the trailer, was the way that they marketed it, and repeat to yourself, it's only a film, it's only a movie, a movie's an American thing, but yeah, it's only a movie, which was great viral marketing from the 70s. So yeah, first foray into film. I'm going to try and do some more of these. I'm going to vary the genres. Whilst horror is my favourite genre, I guess. Well, say horror is my favourite sort of genre. Earlier on, it takes something amazing from a modern horror to kind of grip me. Things like Saw and which I guess isn't very modern anymore. Things like Us or Summerland, Midsummer, Hereditary by Ari Aster. They're quite gripping, and I quite enjoyed them. But yeah, I'm going to try and vary the genres. But I had to start with The Last House on the Left, given that it played a major part in my film and media degree. All that's guess then left for me to do is thank you for watching. I've been the Ignorander, and I'll catch you on the next one.